Hello and welcome to Series Recaps. Today we're going to be explaining the Korean fantasy series called Sweet H0me. Spoilers ahead. A teenager named Hyun moves to a green home mansion apartment. While standing on the building's roof, a young girl training on the roof warns him against jumping because it may cause problems. Jisoo had also moved a week before. On her way out, she encounters a woman pushing an empty baby stroller out to take the baby for a walk. She then encounters Jae-hyun, a Korean teacher, who explains that the woman Im lost her baby a year before and she's not dangerous, she only has a mental disorder. Hyun gets a message that his food supplies have arrived, but when he opens the door, he notices his package has been opened already. He runs back to his flat after seeing his neighbor's door open and how she eats her cat. Seconds later, his neighbor knocks on the door pleading for help. When Hyun requests to see her hands, the woman becomes enraged and blood begins to trickle from her nose. She hears music from above and goes upstairs to pound on Jisoo's door, telling her she's hungry before running out of the window. Later, Jisoo encountered a mysterious man named Wook. Meanwhile, other residents realize they're locked inside the building and can't leave. Hyun arrives on the scene and inquires about the situation with Lee-kyun, a former firefighter. They breach into the security room and locate the controls that will allow them to open the doors. As they do, they see a man in blood standing in front. The man enters and uses his lengthy tongue to suck one of the people dry. Kim Seok tries to close the door as Hyo uses a fire extinguisher to force the monster back. Lee-kyun pushes the monster out as the extinguisher runs out, and they manage to close the monster out. Outside though, they see a lot more monsters running around. Yu walked downstairs to find her brother. She slips and falls down the stairwell, while Jisoo kept an eye on Hyun, who'd passed out after meeting Wook. Wook arrives and is attacked by the starving woman monster who bites him on the shoulder. He kills her, saving Yu's life. When Jisoo glances over and sees a man crying and drinking because he was blamed by his manager, his nose bleeds and he attacks Jisoo, who knocks him out with her bat. The man then starts to transform and Jae-hyun rushes and cuts his top part of the head. A bit after they leave, the now blind Lotus Root monster gets back up. Wook and Yu arrive at the ground floor entrance. The residents capture and tie Wook after seeing the bite on his shoulder and worrying that he's infected. Kim Seok as leader is ordered to murder him before Wook transforms into a monster and kills them all. But as Kim Seok prepares to do so, Wook outruns him and flees. 8 hours later, Hyun wakes up and discovered the world had been in chaos. Feeling hungry, Hyun wonders if his food delivery is still outside in the corridor. He opens his door, but then sees the blind monster entering and complaining it can't see. After keeping quiet, the monster leaves his apartment. Jae-hyun and Jisoo find a man that Wook had beaten and tied up. They helped him, and the man Yoon Jae said that a burglar came to his house. Hyun wonders if he should kill himself now before he turns into a monster, but then hears a noise outside his window. He sees a man 2 floors below him trying to escape through the window and leaves his kids to come and get them later. An eye monster appears and causes the man to fall. As the monster starts entering the kid's apartment, Hyun gets his attention and the monster gets in his apartment and swirls around him. A neighbor shoots the monster and frees Hyun with an improvised rifle and tells him that the monsters don't die. Wanting to save the kids, Hyun visits his neighbor Dusik, who's in a wheelchair. Capable of making weapons, he improves Hyun's spear to electroshock the monsters. Hyun comes face to face with the blind monster, but with the help of the electroshock, he can disable it and reach the children. As he walks out of the apartment, Hyun's nose begins to bleed again, so he instructs the kids to leave. Hyun has nightmares about the car accident in which his family died. His inner monster informs him that if he wanted to, he could make everyone vanish. At that point, a steroid monster bursts through the door, knocking Hyun to the ground and attempting to kidnap the kids. Hyun manages to grip the monster's leg, preventing him from reaching the children and allowing them to flee. The monster punches Hyun and pushes him against the wall, but Jae-hyun slices the monster, forcing it to fall, and they take Hyun and flee with Jisoo. They notice he's infected, but decide not to kill him. The kids meet the blind monster, and while waiting for it to go away, the steroid monster appears behind them. The blind monster hits the steroid one, who pulls the blind monster and starts beating him, and eventually throws him outside the building. The steroid monster manages to catch up to the kids. Meanwhile, Lee-kyun turns the power on, but gets attacked by a spider-like monster. Im with the stroller protects the kids, but the monsters attack her. Seeing it stepping on her baby stroller, Im remembers that her child is long gone. While the monster beats her, the kids return to Hyun. The steroid monster then turns towards them, but Im starts her transformation and attacks it from behind. Jae-hyun decides to take on the monster and gets its attention. Hyun manages to bring the kids to Dusik. Jae-hyun lures the monster and makes it fall from the building. Im regains her senses and stops her transformation, and Jisoo brings her to Dusik and the kids. Yoon-jae comes down and shares meals with the residents as store owner Kim Seok closes his shop. Hyo broadcasts and declares the first level to be safe and encourages any remaining resident survivors to bring food and weapons down with them. Jin-ok wants to open the shutters, who's desperate to reclaim her child. They notice the girl running towards them. A man resolves to rush to her aid, but the tongue monster pierces both him and the girl. Before the tongue monster enters, the residents manage to close the shutters. Jae-hyun and Jisoo decide to go to the first floor to make sure it's safe, and Hyun joins them. Lee-kyun is trapped in a spider web when she wakes up. She manages to flee before the spider monster returns and murders her. The spider monster, however, notices her entering the ventilation and chases after her, but she escapes. The military announces martial law and explains that monsters exist and it's related to human desire. The monsters are hard to kill and have regeneration abilities. They need to isolate anyone with the symptoms and must kill them before they complete their transformation. Making their way downstairs, Hyun's group finds a corpse of a man who got killed recently. In that moment, a speed monster hits Hyun and he falls. He wakes up 3 hours later with the residents knowing he's undergoing transformation. By letting him stay after voting, Kim Seok gets angry and his nose starts bleeding and ends up being put in the same room as Hyun. Wook walks to the first floor and sees the man he beats and proceeds to do the same. The man manages to flee, and while bleeding profusely, he informs them that he's transforming into a monster and requests that they imprison him. Inside the locked room, the man asks Hyun how to become like him. One of the kids informs Dusik that Im was taking too long in the restroom. When he investigates, he discovered her transformed into a monster. Hyun is escorted out of the isolation room by Hyo, who asks if he can bring Dusik from room 1408. Dusik opens the bathroom door to see Im has transformed into a baby monster. Dusik can't bear shooting the baby monster, so he merely just shuts the door. Wook and Hyun head upstairs. Lee-kyun confronts Ho for using Hyun and explains that Hyun is their strongest weapon. He planned on switching the voters to let him stay, but to his surprise it wasn't necessary. Hyo reveals that he read a blog in which someone knew about the disease before it spread and called it a curse. Seeing the blog, Lee-kyun recalls seeing her fiancé also reading that blog. Going up the stairs, Hyun feels there's a monster on the floor and wants to kill it. As he opens the door, Wook punches Hyun and he comes to his senses. However, in that moment, the long hand of the Reach monster grabs Wook's head and pulls him in. Hyun goes after him, but encounters the Speed monster. Just before the monster hits him, Yuri shoots the monster with an arrow and causes it to run away. Yuri and An see Hyun and the unconscious Wook and decide to help. When Wook wakes up, he stands up and leaves. An realizes Hyun is infected and tries chasing him out, but reveals he's joking and will be joining him to save the children, and they reach Dusik. Having obtained a key from Yoon-jae, Wook unlocks the next door to Yoon-jae's apartment and discovers a photo studio as well as numerous photos of Yoon-jae abusing kids. Yoon-jae realizes he's lost his keys and declares that he isn't infected. He attacks Wook with a hammer as he enters the first level, but Wook manages to stop him and continues to beat him with the hammer, claiming he doesn't deserve human death. Wook drags Yoon-jae outside through the entrance shutters. He returns, barely standing, and attempts to close the shutter from the outside, but is stopped by Jae-hyun. Hyun and the rest return to the first floor, bringing the children. Later that night, the tongue monster feeds on Yoon-jae until he's grabbed by a larger monster. After killing Yoon-jae, the locals ponder if they should allow Wook to stay. Recalling the blog she heard from Hyo, Lee-kyun rides off on An's bike. Hyun is released only to go upstairs and get a variety of supplies or items the residents need. In one of his runs, he encounters the Speed monster, but manages to return downstairs. The residents are alerted of monster covered in hair. Son-yoon realizes that's her husband, who asks her to kill him, and she grants him his wish. Lee-kyun reaches the clinic at which her fiancé died in a fire. She finds his tablet in his office and reads that the blog was his and volunteered to get infected into looking for a way to resist the monsterization. Moments later, the military shows up and takes Lee-kyun. They question her about how she knows so much. Lee-kyun knows they'll kill her if she knows too much or if she is useless to them. She tells them she knows someone is resisting monsterization. Hyo sends Hyun to the basement to repair the camera. The spider monster snatches him just as he does. After that, some of the residents go to release Hyun. When they reach him, the speed monster attacks them. In the meantime, the spider monster infiltrates the first floor and confronts Dusik. The speed monster is temporarily stopped by Hyo shooting him in the eye, allowing them to flee. They can distract him and get inside a car by using car alarms. The car is subsequently attacked by several creatures and they crash near the exit. Arn appears and uses a fire thrower to kill all the creatures. On the other hand, the spider monster caught the little girl, but Dusik saves her. While the monster is on the verge of piercing his leg, the rest of the residents arrive to assist and trap the creature. The monster leg is set on fire, causing it to panic. Hyun and the others return just as the monster is about to attack the residents, and Hyun stabs the creature and begins electrocuting it. Ryujae decides to break the shower rules and takes one, but discovers the water is contaminated. Hyo then calls Jusik to the basement and asks him to reinforce one of the cars, as they need to move out before people start to panic. Han Yoo-jin releases Lee-kyun, explaining that those who resist monsterization are referred as special infectees, and that the 15th day after the first symptom is the hardest. Only one had lived past the 15th day, but he had disappeared. Yu tells everyone that they have food for 5 days only and need to go outside and gather some provisions. Jisoo falls ill and they realize it's her appendix. To save her life, they need special supplies to operate on her. As soon as their car emerges from the basement, the steroid monster rushes them and flips the car, having evolved into a larger version of itself and survived the fall. Hyo guesses their strategy failed after hearing the outside noise. Even though the risk is higher, Jisoo gives her permission to operate and he begins. Meanwhile, Hyun tries to shock the steroid monster with electricity, but it has no effect. Arn exits, throws 2 Molotov cocktails at the beast and rushes over to Hyun. When Ikyun arrives with a fire truck, Wook gets Yuri out of the car just as it's about to catch fire and explode. Ikyun throws the monster down a building site with a burning container, trapping him beneath it. Ikyun questions Hyun about when he first got the symptoms and if something spoke to him and how he escaped it. Hyun explains he just wanted to live. Ikyun then reveals she got caught by soldiers and they told her about experiments to prevent monsterization. As she also wanted to live, she told them about it. While eating, Son Yoon reveals that she had symptoms for a while and wishes to go outside to not endanger them. The residents don't want her out and vote for her to stay and isolate herself. Kyun recalls the offer. If she signals them where Hyun is, she'll give her the location of her fiancé. Suddenly, a soldier attacks her, but she disarms him. Later, they hear other soldiers looking for Hyun and Kyun breaks it and tells the rest to remove the SOS signal on the building. Kyun visits Son Young and tells her she needs to survive the first 15 days. Hyun and Wook see the security guard turning into a monster entering the elevator and heading down. They rush to alarm the rest. A monster attacks Wook, who tells Hyun to continue alone, who then jumps down to the first floor and breaks his leg. The elevator door opens with Jin Ok waiting in front. The security guard is covered in flies, who then attacks Jin Ok, but Jae Hyun saves her. In the fight, the monster breaks Jae Hyun's katana and cuts off his left arm. As the residents come, Jae Hyun rises and strikes the monster from behind, wielding his shattered katana. He pushes it back into the elevator where he continues to fight him, puncturing the backpack's fuel and ordering the residents to burn him. Hyo has no choice but to throw a Molotov at him, which ignites the both of them. After burying Jae Hyun along with the others, Jisoo has finally woken up from the previous episode and seen what happens. An armored truck breaks into the Green Home building. As the men come out, they find the runaway soldier and cut his finger. They try to open a briefcase with his fingerprint, but as it doesn't work, their leader Shin tells them to capture everyone in the building. They quickly capture most of the residents and draw a circle that will be their prison. Shin shoots one of the residents in the back, causing everyone to gather in the circle as they watch her die. Hyo asks where they came from and what happened. Shin explains they came from a church and everyone there is dead as they killed each other. Wook and Kyun join forces and manage to kill 2 of the criminals. They find one of the kids, who is with a harmless slime monster who had previously saved him from the criminals. Meanwhile, the gang leader finds that Hyo is the leader and even performs surgery and offers him to join him, and he agrees. Shin is informed about the infected woman and they visit Son Young and shoot her in the head. Wook and Kyun form a plan. Kyun attacks the criminals, killing one of them and forcing 4 to follow her. Wook manages to kill 2 of the persuaders while Kyun traps the other 2. Hyo sees an opportunity and jumps on the leader, and the rest of the residents start to fight back. However, the gang leader takes down Hyo and forces everyone to stop. Son Yoon then appears and with her arm transformed, she kills one of the soldiers. She heads towards Hyo, but Hyun steps in front of her and she pierces him. Having no choice, Hyun strangles her. The gang leader realizes Hyun isn't ordinary and takes him to the roof. While Shin is gone, Kyun assaults the other criminals and manages to free the residents. The leader wonders how to have fun with Hyun on the rooftop, but suddenly Oimyeon transforms his arm, piercing Shin and then dropping him off the building. Oimyeon confesses that he, like Hyun, is a monster. Hyun takes Oimyeon to the infant monster to prove they're monsters who don't kill people. Oimyeon is surprised but wonders whether there are humans who will not fight a monster and displays a military flyer offering protection to anyone who reports someone who has resisted monsterization. Hyun and Oimyeon return on the first floor, where Hyun tells the residents to lower their guns. Oimyeon tries to convince Hyun to join him and that they're the natural evolution. He describes how he agreed to be tested for the disease, but no matter what they tried, they couldn't get the monster out of him. He then recognized the reason was because he was the monster and killed the scientists before fleeing. The residents find the slime monster. The boy and Hyun try to explain it won't harm them, but the residents still burn and kill it. Hyun starts to consider Oimyeon right. Hyun finds the military safety promise impossible and wants to speak with Hyun, but he refuses. Oimyeon states he doesn't plan to stay for long and tells them about Operation Golden Hour, in which in last effort the military will kill everyone as they can't distinguish humans from monsters. Kyun reveals her deal with the military and the signal device. Having shown symptoms, Dusik returns to his apartment. Having overheard Kyun, Ryujae steals the device and turns on the signal. Yuri's inhaler runs out and she starts having trouble breathing. Wook finds her and tries to carry her out to find a new inhaler. Oimyeon stops them, but Hyun tells him to let them go as it doesn't matter anymore and he'll be coming with them. As Wook goes out with Yuri, Oimyeon shoots her in the back and starts shooting the other residents. Hyun starts fighting Oimyeon, who reveals that Son Yoon was already dead, but he controlled her dead body. Hyun's arms transform into wing-like bones, and as he attacks Oimyeon, he turns him into goo. Hyun then turns towards the residents, but Dusik appears and hugs him. He calms down and turns into a human again. The next day, Ahn dies in his sleep. The residents continue to dig the hole Ahn had started and are surprised to find a secret tunnel. Oimyeon is still alive and escapes with the armored truck. Soon it starts to snow and the military arrives, telling the residents to surrender the infected and they will be led to safety. One of the residents makes his way out of the tunnel and discovers a power switch, but turning it on causes an explosion. The soldiers mistook it for a weapon and opened fire on the greenhouse, forcing the residents to enter the tunnel as well. Yu's curious about Hyun, so Hyo sets out to find him. He locates him and decides to stay. He waits inside as the building begins to fall and obstruct the tunnel, recording times with his sister as his nose begins to bleed. The residents can't seem to discover a way out of the tunnels. An old lady then sees her lost dog, who then leads them to an exit. Reaching out, they're surrounded by military personnel. Ryujae reveals he pushed the button, making Han Yoo-jin question Kyun if she no longer cared about her fiancé, but takes the briefcase the criminals carried and states the deal isn't off. The survivors are loaded on a truck and taken to safety, while Kyun heads elsewhere. In the final scene, we see Hyun in the SWAT truck next to Wook, who could be Oimyeon, who is now possessing his body. Hopefully, all our questions about the finale of Sweet Home will be answered in Season 2. That's all folks. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more. See you next time.